When Emily left, the atmosphere became quite tense. Jeon, wanting to talk to Han, asked if she could go to the bathroom first, but then the girl didn't move a finger to get up. To avoid making her feel uncomfortable, John decided to go to the bathroom for a while, saying he would be back later. When he left the room, Chloe got scared, thinking they were being scolded. Whispering, John realized the blonde had been eavesdropping, but it turned out she had approached because she saw Am leave and wanted to keep chatting with Leon. They then went somewhere else to continue their conversation. John, confused by the situation, asked Am if she was okay. Although Chloe didn't think it was a good question, Am replied that she had finally asked Han to apologize, even though she was completely scared. John, having witnessed the whole conversation, was amazed by Amoy's ability to defeat Hannah with her words. Impressed, Am asked Chloe to help her become the best heroine, which made Chloe happy. While holding Amelie's hands, the blonde rejoiced that she had finally spoken up. Even John noticed the high motivation in the air, and the girls agreed they should give their best effort for the play. The girls headed to the auditorium while John returned to Han. Although they asked him to accompany them afterward, Johan still didn't know what had happened. However, remembering how Han looked, he began to worry about her. Even he would be concerned, as she seemed completely shattered. Knocking and asking to enter Han's room, she allowed him in, apologizing. He sat beside her and suggested going out to get something to eat. Despite Han rejecting the offer, he persisted, mentioning that he had been quite hungry lately. However, Han remained silent, and he noticed her curiosity about what had happened earlier. At that moment, John asked all the questions circling in his mind due to his curiosity, aware that it was something he couldn't meddle in, believing it was something the two of them had to resolve on their own. That's when Han asked Jeon what he would do if she turned out to be a bad woman, thinking he would hate her and wouldn't like her at all. Although John thought it depended on the severity of the situation, Han looked at him with a worried expression, waiting for a clear answer. Johan continued, expressing that the last thing he expected was for Han to become a bad person. Upon hearing this, Han asked what she should do. At that moment, John realized Amelie's words were significant to Han. Being honest, John admitted he didn't know much about the dynamics between the two of them, since he hadn't talked to many people in the club and didn't know everyone yet. While Han might ignore his advice, John asked her to do what she believed was right, something Han didn't expect. John told her to choose her own path because, in the end, others' decisions would also affect her. He reminded her that the whole situation wasn't pleasant because his only intention was for Han to be at peace. However, due to how he expressed it, Han didn't fully understand the sermon he gave. Since John was talking without much knowledge, saying random things, Han asked him for a hug. Seeing Han's state, Johan hugged her and joked about their dear president being sad. Han blamed him for that, though John didn't understand what she meant. Still, Han considered his opinion, hoping it would help. Before leaving, Jae wanted to say something else. He asked Han to keep a promise she had made to someone else, saying it would be unpleasant if she didn't. Now John wanted to know what his Nuna would ask, but it didn't matter anymore. John hoped the play would be a success, and hearing this, Han remembered what she was going to ask. It was for a kiss. Of course, this embarrassed John due to how unexpected it was, but it didn't bother her, despite how sudden the situation was. They had done it several times before, yet he still felt shy. This was because someone might be around, but since no one was, they ended up kissing more than once. That kiss led to something more, and even Han realized it. Although he excused himself, saying he hadn't done anything, she found it pleasant and asked him to continue. You know how the word of the Lord is. But since they were in public, Hannah only helped him read a paragraph without going to further extremes. After finishing, Han asked him to hurry and meet Chloe, as she was going to rest for a while. That's how Han left the room, though she was trembling because they hadn't done anything, and she had another appointment later. After that, John was busy studying for his exams in the play. Understanding how hard it was, he practiced even when he got home. At one point, he thought about giving up because he didn't understand how the others managed it, especially Chloe, who held the top spot in her faculty. He underestimated himself, thinking Chloe was like a goddess. However, since he had a math exam, he wouldn't sleep that night. He had promised everyone he would do his best because it would be very embarrassing if he didn't. At that moment, he heard Chloe. The blonde saw him looking very tired, and he still thought she was a goddess. Chloe told him to only focus on his exam, even though he wanted to keep studying the script while he had time. Chloe recommended practicing his lines later since, at that moment, he only needed to understand the plot, as it was still a draft and could change. John just needed to focus on practicing with Amelie. However, he thought he might be a burden to Amelie since he had never acted before and didn't want to ruin it. He felt it was very difficult, but Chloe still gave him a lot of encouragement so he wouldn't worry. She offered to coordinate everything to ensure it went well and to answer any questions. Aeon thought it was amazing and decided to take her up on her offer. At that moment, he asked her about math, and thanks to Chloe, he was saved that night, as it turned out much better than John had expected. Now, during exam days, they decided not to practice as a result. John didn't sleep for 3 days to study thoroughly, thinking that thanks to that effort, he would do better than in the midterms. After that, Joe felt like a fool for not knowing much during the midterms, promising to study more for the next semester. Later, he ran into Chloe, who was on her way to the store, heavily bundled up to avoid being recognized. Jeon accompanied her since they had been seeing each other very often lately, and this was due to Chloe's change of opinion about Leon. At that moment, she was concerned about her outfit, as it was the first thing she found due to her laziness, and didn't want to go back to change. While John talked about an exercise Chloe had solved that appeared on the same exam, he proposed thanking her by inviting her for coffee. He also asked her to recommend some good courses, promising to send her the information later. After getting coffee, John asked if he would get his scholarship, something he was almost certain of. Seeing Leon's good mood, Chloe assumed he did well, thanks to her. That's how they finished their exams the next day, and John felt very grateful to Chloe. Now, only the play was left, as they would have to rehearse almost every day. If John needed to rest, he would have to tell Cho, though he wanted to ask her frequent questions during rehearsals. She asked him to let her know if she was being too strict, as she wasn't aware of it. However, John hoped he wouldn't get discouraged, as he wasn't very good at acting. The next day, Gina and Emma were reviewing all the flyers that had been made. Emma asked who would handle such a heavy task, and Gina told her she would, as Emma was busy. Emma was concerned about this, but Gina continued saying that everyone else would also be busy and that she could find a friend to help and have fun while doing it, as it was a simple task. However, Gina only did it because she knew Emma, and now she had to leave. Emma asked when it had to be finished, and Gina said it needed to be ready by next week. Emma could take her time but not waste the whole day playing, as Gina would need her help with other things afterward. Gina left skipping with joy, but Emma didn't know where to put the flyers. Meanwhile, John returned with some drinks, thinking he might have bought too many. At that moment, he ran into some seniors from his club, so he approached them to say hello. He mentioned he was on his way to rehearsal and had bought some drinks beforehand, so he took the opportunity to offer them drinks. The seniors accepted since Han had invited all of them. They informed Gina to grab some as well, which she did, expressing interest in trying to get more. John was curious about the luggage they were carrying, which turned out to be costumes, curtains, and props for the scenery that they were going to have cleaned. The seniors also hoped John would be in their group due to how useful he was. They recalled how much fun they had talking to him at the last party, although when they went outside to smoke, John, who didn't smoke, simply accompanied them to get to know them better. The seniors found it funny because Leon was too polite, though he only did it because he didn't want to be alone, which is why he followed them. Because of this, Gina felt proud and asked them to start calling her Nuna from now on. She accepted it, but the laughter continued. Due to the little time they had to return to their tasks. Left alone, Jeon couldn't quite remember his Nuna's name, but he knew she was close to Chloe, so he planned to ask her later. At that moment, he ran into Emma, who was putting up flyers. However, Jeon didn't know this, as Emma couldn't reach high enough to stick them. Unfortunately, one got wrinkled and the rest fell from her hands, making her realize she should have brought a bag. Instantly, John handed her a drink and asked what she was doing, teasing her while also offering something sweet to drink. He found it strange to see her alone, especially putting up flyers, even more so with so many left to post, unsure if she would finish. As he helped pick them up, Emma mentioned she still had 5 more stacks. Of course, upon hearing this, John found it amusing and suggested she distribute them better. However, since Emma didn't find it funny, Johan stopped laughing and handed her the flyers, as he had to leave. But before going, he told her not to leave since he would only deliver the drinks and come back, which embarrassed her upon hearing it, leaving Emma alone for a moment, feeling both embarrassed and overwhelmed to the point where she wished her heart wouldn't race so fast over something so small. Yet after taking a deep breath, she couldn't help but smile at the previous situation. When they reunited, Emma scolded him for being so meddlesome given how busy she was. Emma wanted him to hurry up, and from the way she spoke, Johan felt the urge to hit someone but instead invited Emma to come closer. They decided to set aside the argument and focus on putting up the flyers. John proposed placing them in a star shape in the main building, though Emma didn't see it as a game. But eventually, they did it. Their fun led them to take a photo and post it on social media. They spent the day together, putting up flyers and having fun. A girl passing by admired them, commenting on how adorable they looked, and even agreed to attend the play. When they finished posting the last flyer, it became clear that poor Emma would have to continue doing this throughout the week. She thanked him for his help and prepared to leave. Johan returned her bag and said goodbye, which seemed fine, though it was clear he expected something in return. Emma offered to let Johan help her the next day. Noticing how red her face was, he sarcastically reminded her of her earlier claim that she didn't need his help. This annoyed Emma, as now she didn't want his help. However, Johan insisted he would help after rehearsing for the play and asked her to wait for him. This cheered Emma up, though she was slightly annoyed because it felt like he was treating her like a little girl. So she continued treating him the same way. The next day, Emma and Johan met to distribute flyers, just as they had planned to rehearse. They saw each other every day, having a good time until the day ended. At night, Emma couldn't stop thinking about those afternoons spent with Jay. One day, while Emma waited, everyone everyone was busy with the props for the play. However, poor Emma thought Leon didn't want to help her this time. One of the guys asked if she had finished, and she replied no, but decided to finish it right then and there. She knew Leon was the lead and would be busy, telling herself she was shameless for asking for his help despite his situation. Still, it didn't stop her from feeling sad that he didn't come. She reflected on where Leon might have come from, joking that it was probably a dumpster. Originally, it was her task, and she could do it alone. However, the wind made it difficult to stick the flyers until one was blown away entirely. It seemed like even the wind was against her, but what bothered her more was that John didn't come. In reality, she felt sad because she was worried about him and didn't understand her feelings. At that moment, she heard someone looking for her but accidentally hit him with a flyer. Emma realized it was Leon, who scolded her for not waiting for him at the club. She explained that she thought he was busy, and he confirmed that he had been helping other groups, which is why he was late. However, he had been looking for her everywhere. Hearing this, Emma felt embarrassed, knowing that he had been searching for her. Johan had even looked for her in her department, but Emma couldn't bring herself to look him in the eye. That's when Emma shyly told him it was because he was slow, but she smiled without realizing it, leaving John confused because her actions and words didn't match. They went out to eat something delicious for Emma. Johan mentioned that Chloe had told him it didn't matter if they couldn't put up all the flyers due to the excess that was printed, and that they should leave the rest in the props room. This surprised Emma because no one had told her anything. They assumed it was because of the hard work she had done, as there were too many copies. While eating, Emma accidentally dropped her dessert on her clothes. Like a gentleman, John handed her a napkin to clean herself, which she thanked him for, embarrassed. He asked if she had finished eating, but she suggested having some cake. Although John thought it was quite heavy, they were both already full. In reality, John intended to invite her to eat. Emma clarified that she might have room for a little more, though Leon wasn't sure. But since it was just a piece of cake, they bought the food and headed to the props room. Emma accepted this hesitantly, but first, they took a short break. When they left, they were full but had to make room for the ice cream they bought. They noticed that there were many posters of their play around the city, which made Leon nervous. When they arrived at the building, Emma realized she didn't have her student card with her and hadn't linked it to her phone. Seeing that there was no guard, John decided they should pass together, needing to be very close to get through. John explained it was a quick way to enter, but Emma couldn't stop thinking about how close they were and how natural it seemed for him. John continued saying that if the guard had been there, they would have mentioned it. However, Emma realized she was the only one who cared about what had just happened. John acted as if they had never prayed together, which crushed her self-esteem. It seemed so ridiculous that she stopped listening to John, lost in thoughts about how they had only prayed once. When she opened the door, she noticed two other people engaged in prayer. Emma, not knowing who they were or why they were there, quickly closed the door and apologized. John told her it was the wrong room, as they had accidentally opened the door to another club. Embarrassed, Emma entered the props room and left her ice cream. John acknowledged Emma's effort, and they left the remaining flyers. Still, Emma was lost in her own world, because John knew she had seen something, even if she denied it. He asked her to sit down and eat her ice cream, which annoyed Emma. John kept insisting until she finally agreed, although she felt bad because it seemed like she was the only one who cared. John's natural demeanor irritated her. Emma sat down but on Leon's lap, which made her very uncomfortable. She asked why he acted like nothing had happened, since his calmness hurt her self-esteem. Although John was thinking about things, it seemed cool to him to appear so calm because it was actually difficult for him to be that way around her. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, especially since they would be seeing each other more often at the club. Emma asked why he had a look as if he didn't care about what had happened. John clarified that a guy will always care about a girl he attends mass with. This embarrassed Emma, as John admitted he felt uneasy around her. They both blushed, turning as red as tomatoes. Emma felt relieved hearing this, and a tear escaped her eye. John noticed and asked why she was crying. It was because of the frustration she had felt. Emma noticed John's nervousness and blushing, finding it endearing. She moved closer to John to look at him and asked why he was so red, wanting to know what was going on. It was something normal for him, as Emma's presence had thrown him into a panic. She began teasing him about how hard he tried to hide his shyness, but now she found it cute. John, on the other hand, was even more confused by her sudden mood changes. Emma was fascinated by Leon's gaze, but he pointed out her bipolarity. Onama blamed it on the cause, emphasizing it happened only once, while John stressed that he was red because it was hot. At that moment, Emma wanted to kiss him so much that John didn't know how to respond to something so sudden. That's when she kissed him repeatedly. Emma revealed things she had heard people do in that place, exactly what she had seen, and she found it indecent for people to behave like that at the university. Of course, Jo didn't know what to say. She wasn't someone ordinary, something John noticed as well, since she suddenly suggested they pray, which they did with praises to Jesus, offering a heartfelt prayer. Their voices blended beautifully, continuing for 2.5 chapters. After a while, we see Emma covered and still, as if uncomfortable. She was extremely embarrassed about what had happened, saying things and doing things she normally never would, feeling utterly confused and thinking she had gone crazy. Although John approached approached her to remove the towel, Emma didn't let him and apologized for everything, saying she had tempted him. John thought she was referring to this moment, but in reality, she meant the first time. He let it slide because he didn't know how Emma could speak so naturally after that, so much so that she said nothing, not understanding herself. Even so, in an agitated tone, she wanted to tell Leon something, asking him not to be embarrassed the next time they met, but he complained, pointing out she still had a towel on her head. Emma continued, saying she wanted them to talk naturally without feeling uncomfortable. John was about to mention how she had scolded him for that before, but Emma covered his mouth, telling him to pretend nothing happened until she said otherwise. Ju noticed Emma always wanted to be the dominant one, something she apologized for. Meanwhile, her ice cream melted. At the same time, Professor Yelena was reviewing the students' projects, impressed by how well her young students acted, even though it was a simple task. Everything was going fine until she came across a video featuring a couple wearing matching outfits, John and Chloe. The professor was intrigued, wondering if they would kiss. When she saw the kiss, she was delighted because both had put in great effort. She remembered the student had once told her that John was just an acquaintance, but now it seemed clear he was her boyfriend, which made it even sweeter. Had Chloe told her earlier that John was her boyfriend, she would have gladly switched her to another team. However, upon taking a closer look at Leon, she remembered he was the same young man Emma was dating. She wondered if they were also a couple. The professor then moved on to a video by Amo and Conan, which melted her heart even more. She became so emotional that she wanted something to drink while watching the videos. Her enthusiasm lasted for a while until she sank back into her depression, feeling completely alone and longing to fall in love. Despite being popular, she didn't want to do anything until she received a message. Grabbing her phone, she saw it was from Han, asking her to consider his request. The professor wasn't sure how to handle such cases, but felt intrigued. She decided to give him an answer after the play. The next day, we see Chloe arriving late to the club. Without stopping, she entered and heard a voice greeting her. It was Jeon, sweeping the floor and asking Chloe if she had eaten breakfast. He offered her some rice buns he had brought, which left Chloe confused seeing him there. The following day at the club, Chloe arrived to find John there again, but this time he had brought sandwiches for them to eat. Chloe didn't know why he was there. The same thing happened the next day and the day after that, noticing that Leon was very diligent. While they were in the auditorium, Anoli and Johan were playing, but Chloe thought Leon was very hardworking and energetic, in addition to getting along well with everyone. This intrigued her even more. Why was he like that? Suddenly, Gina arrived from behind, startling Chloe. Chloe scolded her for being so sudden and asked if she didn't have work to do. Although Gina was there for work, she asked about the boy since she didn't know his name and noticed how kind he was. While trying to remember his name, Gina recognized that he was always attentive and considerate with others. Eventually, Chloe told Gina his name. Gina found him peculiar, noting how good the boy was. All his Nunas got along well with him, something Chloe confirmed. Seeing how busy Chloe was, Gina invited her to go out that night, and the blonde accepted. However, after hearing what Gina said, Chloe assumed that Leon was just good with everyone. Her first impression of him was based on how he interacted with Han, but now she thought the president had a good eye for choosing people. She also noticed that Leon was attentive to his superiors and arrived first in the mornings. Later, Chloe heard a voice calling her. It was Leon, who wanted to accompany her. Chloe didn't know what to do since she had promised to help him. John asked if she was in a bad mood, but the blonde denied it, changing the subject. To everyone else, he seemed very pleasant, which made John happy, though he didn't feel deserving of being seen that way. He asked Chloe what she thought of him. In her mind, she acknowledged the effort he put in and was satisfied with it, but she couldn't say it aloud. John kept insisting, but Chloe didn't respond. Despite that, the question lingered in her mind. Meanwhile, John thanked Chloe for all the help she had given him. He considered her a great support,